oppression has always two sides. There's on the one side the oppressed person, and on the other side the oppressor. Both are alienated from true humanity. The only difference is that the one is dying and the other seems to feel fine about it and is enjoying this, but he cannot really enjoy it because this oppression and to share in a structure of oppression and exploitation means to be robbed of one's own humanity.
This final segment of our study of the life and work of Jürgen Moltmann and his wife Elisabeth Moltmann-Wendel presents a theological challenge to our political and economic structures. Jürgen Moltmann's emphasis on God's promise that love and justice shall one day prevail creates an urgent theological imperative to work toward a just and sustainable society now. The implications of the theology of hope for liberation in the third world and for economic responsibility in the first world were sounded by theologians José Miguez Benigno and Douglas Meeks. Professor Benigno, past president of the World Council of Churches, is the leading Protestant theologian in Latin America and the one most identifiable with the work of liberation theology. Douglas Meeks of the Eden Theological Seminary, a close personal friend and translator of Jürgen Moltmann, has a long history of passionate and articulate involvement with the social concerns of the United States. In this final program, through selections from the presentations and personal interviews with Trinity's Director of Communications, the Reverend Leonard Freeman, we will look at the social implications of the theology of hope, the quest for a just economy, the quest for a just society.
The Christian faith says we shall only be able to know what each person, group, or nation deserves on the foundation of God's love and human love. Even more importantly, we shall be able actually to give what the other deserves only through the power of God's love. Justice is radically dependent on love. If love fails, our hope for a just society will be mortally wounded. For a long time in our church tradition, we had to think of God in relationship to the power of the state or the power of the emperor. I think, at least in the North Atlantic societies, we've moved into a new era in which we have to think now about God and the power that comes out of the market. This is not to say that the state is no longer powerful or that the state is no longer dangerous, but the states that we know are states that are fundamentally determined by the power that comes out of the process of accumulation. The crisis for the Christian church in North America, or maybe even the North Atlantic community, as it confronts justice in our time, is that we have allowed the church to be absorbed too much into the market society in whose logic God's justice cannot appear.
The laws of economy are not fixed laws. They are part of the structures that we build and therefore that we can change. Therefore, I think that the Christianity does not create an economic system, but it calls an economic system to be at the service of human life. And the market, which sort of runs on its own, becomes really an antichrist, a false god.
Is it the church's job to replace the market economy or to surround it with something greater than itself?
I think there's nothing wrong with the market logic itself, as long as it can be kept within the sphere of the market.
There is indeed a connection between the market and religion, and that's the temple. The temple was the first bank where all the goods for sacrifices must be available at any time. So the availability of everything in the temple was the beginning of banking. What did Jesus do when he threw the merchants out of the temple? He threw them. He cleaned the bank. It was an attack upon the bank in Jerusalem, and not just a religious act for higher things. So my father's house should be open to everyone. He was cleaning the rooms for the heathen.
We have what Karl Polanyi has called the market society. Exchange relationships replace all other social relationships. The logic of accumulation invades every dimension of life. The individual is left alone in a struggle against all others. When this happens, many persons are excluded from livelihood, and thus is created surplus people, people who cannot be fitted into our existing systems of production and consumption.
The church now is not, I think, raising these serious questions about an alternative way of distributing what people need for life and for life abundant.
Basic problem for our countries, my own for instance, is that the price of paying part of the interest of the foreign debt, the price to be paid is the hunger of the larger part of our population.
Government should be used in order to enhance human life and human community. But where in our society right now are there people who are talking about political power used for those ends? And the question for me is basically, can we have a public household? That's the term of Daniel Bell, a public household, if we don't ask the question about the surplus people who are systematically excluded.
And I think people in the first world in our countries feel this now more and more. There's no hope anymore in our countries. There's cold despair or apathy, disorientation. So if you really want to see hope alive, you must obviously go to the third world. I speak of the third world not in geographical terms, I speak of the third world in class terms. You must go to those people who have no present, who have only hope in the future.
We have in Argentina had, during the last dictatorship, about 10, 15,000 disappeared people. It's called the desaparecidos. Those of us as Christians who had participated in the struggle throughout the military regime, we used to say to ourselves in the group, for us, the very ultimate justification for this is that every human life is written in God's book. This person can be erased from the face of the earth. What is left of a person who cannot decide, who cannot talk freely to others, who is not addressed as a human being, who has no space to live, who has no time of his or her own, he becomes a non-person. Now this is the type of situation which many Latin American people live, marginalized and so on. Now, how a person like that recovers the dignity, the freedom of a person? You tell him, God is your father. He may have never known his father, and he has not had the experience of being a father in that sense, of being able to protect, to care for, to love in freedom. How can the message of unconditional acceptance be received unless a community of mutual free acceptance, number of people who mutually accept each other without preconditions, unless this gives a content to the message? Now, what we are looking for is a society which has a different conception of human life, a conception of human life which is built on the person as a person who becomes himself or herself in the community and in the give and take with the community, where the basic idea is neither competition, as in capitalism, nor simply homogenization, like in socialism, but community, solidarity. For Christians, this is a way of recognizing and celebrating God's love. Of course, that means also that we can work together, and I think this is important, we can work together with people who do not share our faith, but who share our concern for the transformation of society. And when we speak about socialism, we are not speaking about a perfect system that will last forever. We speak about a possibility of reorganizing production and consumption of things and so on in a more human way at the present stage of our history.
A brief comment. Jose Miguez Benino, the importance of both the individual and the social together in the new society that liberation theology is calling for.
I think it's very important to see his vision of a humanistic versus democratic socialism. Yeah, because during the time of the theology of revolution and the early times of liberation theology, the vision was revolution and then a kind of dictatorship of the proletariat and then a people's democracy of the East European type, of the Russian type. We have this in Cuba, and perhaps this is a danger in Nicaragua. And he obviously was influenced by the experiences of the non-violent overthrowing of the military dictatorship in Argentina to a democracy. Similar things happened in the Philippines. So I think he is right. The vision of the basic communities in Latin America must be a democratic, non-dictatorial socialism. But as he admitted, there's no model to be seen so far.
We do not think that we can achieve the perfect good, but we do not think that the present evil is necessary. So the non-necessity of the existing evil is the point, not the possibility of achieving a perfect good. We don't want people in the first world simply to jump into the wagon of the liberation theology or the liberation movements in Latin America or elsewhere. We are grateful for the allies who work in their own situation. On the other hand, I think, although we are in different parts of the world, we are in the same world. And therefore, the questions that we have to face are, in a way, world challenges. And therefore, the way we answer to those challenges in Latin America must somehow mean something in the United States.
I've learned this from you and Latin Americans, that the best service of love theologians can do to each other is to say the truth.